It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of March 28th, 2003. We got 3 films to look at today, so let's go ahead and jump on into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Chris Rock making his directorial debut on the political comedy Head of State, in which he also stars in it with Bernie Mac. So you have a film here where you have one candidate for the presidency dying in an accident a couple of weeks before the election. Meanwhile, the alderman, Mace Gilman, played by Chris Rock, becomes a hero when he rescues a woman and her cat from an old house that would blow up. However, his fiancée Kim does not pay his bills and dumps him, and Gilman loses everything, including his fancy car. While Senator Bill Arnott sees the news on television, he plots a scheme with the party advisors, Martin Geller and Deborah Lassiter, to invite Mace to be the party nominee and lose the election for the other candidate, Vice President Brian Lewis. 4 years later, he would become the candidate and would have the chance of winning the election. Mace has a terrible beginning of the campaign, but when his older brother, Mitch Gillum, played by Bernie Mac, beats him in Chicago, he advises Mace to be himself. Will he have the chance to become the first African-American president of the United States? Who knows? I mean, this was 5 years before Barack Obama did it in real life, so there's a possibility. It's funny because Chris Rock actually got the idea of doing this because of all things, the 1984 presidential election, when you had Democratic presidential nominee Walter Mondale choosing Geraldine Ferraro as his running mate, and the Democrats pretty much knew that they had little chance of defeating Ronald Reagan, and selected Ferraro as a hopes of gaining female support. And I thought that was kind of interesting to have that be the inspiration for this particular film. And you know, it's weird because I'm starting to realize we have a lot of movies in 2003 where it's movies where white people are trying to be black. I mean, we already saw Steve Martin and Queen Latifah doing with Bringing Down the House. We have this movie. Then down the road, as we continue on with the year, we have Malibu's Most Wanted, with Jamie Kennedy reprising his role from the Jamie Kennedy Experiment, where he's a white rapper who really thinks he's black, and then Marcy X in the End of Summer with Lisa Kudrow trying to be black with Damon Wayans as her co-star. And needless to say, these movies do get progressively worse as the year goes on. I would say that this one is probably the second most enjoyable of the two, even though, yeah, you see at the end there, they have the old ladies going, singing the Cisco song. Is it Cisco or, who does that song, by the way? Not Cisco, that's Nelly who's doing the song. It's Getting Hot in Here, and you see the old ladies going, singing the song, and it's just like, this movie is not the best overall. I mean, it's fine for what it is, and like I said, it only gets progressively worse with these comedies we have coming up in the rest of the year. But man, stuff like that is a little bit annoying and gets really cringeworthy really quickly. But at the same time, there is things about the movie I do really like. I like Chris Rock in this. I like Bernie Mac in this too. It's amazing how Bernie Mac kind of had the second renaissance going, largely in part to the Bernie Mac show, and unfortunately it would only last a couple of years because he would pass away 5 years after this movie came out. But there was a time when Bernie Mac's career star power was slowly but surely coming back on the rise here, and he works out with Chris Rock really well. I think the cast overall is very good. The comedy is very hit and miss. It kind of goes for the safe, predictable jokes at times, and that's probably the weakest element of the film in particular. I got a lot of when I watched this, I got a lot of remembrance of something like The Distinguished Gentleman, which is kind of a similar movie, in which Eddie Murphy basically went to Congress and became a congressman. And it's kind of the same movie here, except this movie, I think Chris Rock is more restrained than Eddie Murphy was in The Distinguished Gentleman, because, Eddie Murphy in that movie was more like the Eddie Murphy that we know and love about him. But in this movie, Chris Rock is a little bit more restrained than what he is in some of his other movies, and it's a performance that I think is worthy of. It's a fine performance. I mean, the film itself is really just an okay film, but I really feel like they could have gone a whole lot more deeper with what they could do here. And it's funny because Chris Rock has made other movies as a director since this that I think have been much better. I really liked I Think I Love My Wife, and Top 5 was one of my favorite movies from 2014. And I think there is a lot there that he brings behind the camera. I mean, he is really funny. He really seems like he's really into this, but I just wish that the material was a little bit more, not just playing the safe conservative route. I wish they go for a little bit more of a deeper, heavier joke concept. Go all in, man. You're doing this political satire, and the best political satires know how to go in and take it to an above level that besides something that you would see on a show on CBS. Like, this feels like This feels like a UPN pilot that would have been back in the day for a TV series at times. Like, if you really want to go down that route, look at a movie like Bulworth with Warren Beatty. That movie knew it had to go dark at have a little bit of a darker edge to it and a more satirical edge to it to make it work because of the stuff that Warren Beatty does in that movie. Like, if you want to try to go for something on the level of Dave, which is very much a political comedy, but more of a lighthearted political comedy, I don't know if Chris Rock was the right guy to do something like that, but here it's like he's trying to have a little bit of both, but it feels like the overall film itself, the studio, I think, probably wanted a more safer sell instead of actually something that goes in for more than it should. But like I said, it wasn't a bad movie per se. It was a film that's just, it's a fine film. It's a film that I think works pretty well for what it does, but I feel like there could have been so much more to it, just considering what they have here to work with. I mean, the potential definitely is there. They've got a great cast to work with here. Chris Rock can be very funny, and he's proven to be a good director with his other films. But here it feels like there's times when I think he really has the ideas of what he's trying to do, but then there's times when he feels like he's on autopilot in this. It's a very mixed review, more leaning on the side of I like it, but it's not one I watch on multiple occasions. It's like there's literally nothing else on, and I just want to watch it at some point. It's one I go back and watch maybe once every, I don't know, 5-10 years. Honestly, I haven't seen this one in years, so I'm just going off of what I remember from the last time I watched it. But for what it is, I thought it was alright for what it was. So that's Head of State. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, a film that they probably weren't intending to be a comedy, but that's eventually what it became. So much so that the advertisers for this actually promoted this movie as a comedy at some point. Let's talk about the infamous The Core. Yeah, that first trailer may not advertise it as a comedy. In fact, it's selling as more of a straightforward disaster film and a dramatic disaster film. But quite literally, there's a trailer that came out the same weekend this movie did that literally tells you, well, this is always intended to be a comedy. What are you talking about? See, Leonard Maltin says it's a comedy, so we're going to sell it as a comedy now. Okay, I don't know if that was their intention, but, I mean, that actually kind of changed my view of this movie when it came out. As the trailer show you focus on a team whose mission is to drill to the center of the Earth and set off a series of nuclear explosions in order to restart the rotation of the Earth's core. I mean, this is a film that I had no intention of ever seeing when it first came out. I was just kind of like, yeah, this is just too stupid for my own taste, because it felt like a film that they were literally trying to create the next, Independence Day, or, what was the other big disaster movie that came out around the time? Armageddon is the one I'm thinking of. Like, they were trying to create the next big hit like that. But, and I clearly stepped away from it from a long period of time. I just had no real interest on ever checking this movie out. But then I finally did a couple years ago, and I have to say, man, if this was intended to be a comedy and completely over the top, bravo, man. I gotta give you guys a lot of credit, because this is one of the stupidest movies I've ever seen. But it's one of those so bad it's good type of movies. It's the type of movie that Roland Emmerich, I think, thinks he's making with movies like Independence Day, Resurgence, and 2012. Like, hey, I could make a movie that's so bad it's good. And like, no, your movies are just garbage. And this is a film that I think the original intention was for it to be a serious film, and then the actors, which there's a stacked cast for this movie. I mean, you see Aaron Eckhart, Hilary Swank, Delroy Lindo, Stanley Tucci, DJ Qualls, Richard Jenkins, Bruce Greenwood, Alfre Woodard. Just too good of a cast for a movie of this caliber. And a director that did Entrapment the year before is the last time he was behind the camera, and that was a fun movie in its own rights as well. Even the trailer for this, which unfortunately I can't show because Paramount's kind of iffy, kind of on those copyright claim type of things, but the trailer should have been a warning sign right away of how stupid this was going to be, because they're talking about how the rotation of the Earth has stopped, which, if the rotation of the Earth stops, everybody's already dead to begin with. I mean, it doesn't take a year to do that, but no, it gets stupider when you look at the plot for this, and Here's something I'm looking at right here from the plot synopsis for this movie on Wikipedia, and I want you to listen to something very closely. The U.S. government backs a secret project to build a vessel to drill to the core and release nuclear weapons to restart the rotation. They utilized the work of Dr. Ed Brazelton, who has developed unobtainium, a material that can convert extreme heat into electricity, as well as a laser-based high-speed drilling array. Unobtainium, which is something that is so stupid. It's literally a term that's used in fiction. It's something that does not exist whatsoever. And they literally use it 6 years later in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like, this is one of the stupidest movies I've ever seen in my life, but at the same time, it's one of the most hilariously bad movies I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this is a film that is so terrible, you can't help but laugh about it. The effects in this movie are so terrible. When the actual destruction happens, it's bad CGI and it's absolute worst. Granted, there are a couple of times where they do have a little bit of practical effects in there, but it's mostly bad CG and really, really terrible CD. The destruction of Rome alone is absolutely horrible to watch in terms of watching the CG effects in there, because it's people clearly running from a green screen, a poorly put together green screen. This is a film that just did not give a shit whatsoever, and for that, I have to give it credit where credit is due. It's one of those movies where you think that it's one of those movies, you think at first it's going to be something like, When Time Ran Out, that horrible 1980s disaster film that was essentially the end of the disaster film, and that movie was so terrible that they had to sell that as a comedy later on in video form and in television form. Like, it was on NBC in the late 80s as like a, it had a different title. It was sold more as a comedy, and it was supposed to be taken seriously. You think it's going to be something like that, but it is, but at least in this case, it's hilarious to watch for how bad it is. That movie, When Time Ran Out, is so bad. Like, it's so bad that it killed the disaster movie genre. And it didn't help that Airplane came out not too long after that to really put an end to that, and the disaster movie era that we had there. But this is a film that's so stupid and so ridiculously bad. Like, you have to admire the levels of the balls that this movie has to go for how stupid it gets. I mean, it knows it's a comedy. I mean, it may have not started off that way, but they knew exactly what they were doing, and I have to give them a lot of credit for that. And it really turned me around the first time I actually saw this movie, because it was just like, it's a film that I was just like, okay, here we go again, another bad Roland Emmerich film. But no, they actually made something that was so ridiculously stupid and over the top. I have to give it credit for what it was trying to do. This is a guilty pleasure movie. I can see why many people consider this a guilty pleasure film. It's so bad, it's so ridiculously stupid, but goddamn, I had a good time watching it. And if you go into it knowing it's a comedy, I think you're going to have a very good time with it. But avoid the trailers that sell this as a serious, straightforward drama. No, this is a comedy, and a fun, so bad it's good type of comedy. I can't recommend it enough, The Core. So let's go ahead and take a look at our last movie, John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson in John McTiernan's Basic. This movie is so basic, I had to do it. It was just right there, but it's the second film starring John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson after they worked on Pulp Fiction, and it follows a DEA agent solving the mystery of a bungled training exercise that leads to the death of multiple Army Ranger trainees and their instructor. And most notably, this is the last film directed by John McTiernan, who it was his most recent film because he has been in jail for over 10 years after this movie came out, and nobody wants to hire him anymore. And there's probably a good reason for that, because he always finds himself getting into trouble. He has had numerous criminal charges, including where he went to jail for wiretapping. He was convicted of a felony charge. He had an invasion of privacy civil suit. There was debts and bankruptcy. Like, he has been, like, he's one of those directors where he's basically been out of work since this movie came out because he just couldn't stay out of trouble. And the film itself, I wish he had a better film to go out on, because, this is the guy that gave us great films like Predator, Die Hard, Hunt for Red October, Last Action Hero, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Thomas Crown Affair. And to go out like this is not a good way to go out. This is a film that is so very much a mess of a film, so sloppy. Its biggest selling point is trying to sell you on the fact that John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson are back together again. And even though they're hardly in the movie together, and it's not really worth it when they do meet up. I mean, it's not a good film whatsoever. It's so bad it's causing my eye to twitch a little bit. But I don't know what I'm doing. But you get the idea here. The movie is, like, it's a film that's lackluster on so many levels. They throw so many twists at you Like, this is Argyle before Argyle had those twist endings that make no sense whatsoever. They just keep throwing them at you, and it's just like, after the fourth or fifth one, it's just like, oh my god, just stop already, for the love of God. It just keeps going and going and going, and it never ends. It never lets up whatsoever. This is a film that's 98 minutes long. This thing should be a fast-paced film, a breezy film, but no. It has to do these things because it literally has nothing else to work with here. It's a lazy film. It's a terrible film. It's a movie that really, John McTiernan shouldn't have been arrested for this movie too because of how bad it is. It's just like, what a way to end your film career with a terrible film like this that's just uneventful, a plot that's so ridiculously stupid, too many twist endings, just a bad, bad film. Avoid this one like the plague. So that is basic. And so with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, we'll jump into April with 5 films, including Colin Farrell and Keith Sutherland in Joe Schumacher's Phone Booth. We also have Amanda Bynes, after her big movie debut with Big Fat Liar the year before, starring in a new comedy with Colin Firth, What a Girl Wants. And we also have Vin Diesel in A Man Apart. We also have Eddie Griffin in Dysfunctional Family, and also Cowboy Bebop the movie. So we'll take a look at those 5 films on the next episode. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the plays on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, I'm off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.